viewers, and welcome to another chapter of reading. We're in for a long one, so let's get started, shall we? Chapter 14, Felix Felicis. Harry had herbology the first thing the following morning. He had been unable to tell Ron and Hermione about his lesson with Dumbledore over breakfast for fear of being overheard, but he filled them in as they walked across the vegetable patch toward the greenhouses. The weekend's brutal wind had died out at last, the weird mist had returned, and it took them a little longer than usual to find the correct greenhouse. Wow, scary thought, you know who, said Ron quietly as they took their places around one of the Snarglehuff stumps that formed this term's project, and began pulling on their protective gloves. I mean, I would too, but then again, herbology's not one of the subjects I would excel at. Mainly because of my utmost aversion to the most undignified disaster commonly known as mud. And if you recall correctly, I was like, I was not amused when reading that, when reading about it. But anyway, onto the chapter. But I still don't get why Dumbledore's showing all this. I mean, it's really interesting and everything, but what's the point? Don't know, said Harry, inserting a gumshoe. But he says it's all important and it'll help me survive. I think it's fascinating, said Hermione earnestly. It makes absolute sense to know as much about Voldemort as possible. How else will you find about its weaknesses? An excellent point, Hermione, but that's pretty usual for you. So, how was Slughorn's last party? Harry asked her thickly through the gum shield. Oh, it was quite fun, really, said Hermione, now putting on protective goggles. I mean, he droned on about famous ex-pupils a bit, and he absolutely fawns on McLaggen because he's so well connected, but he gave us some really nice food, and he introduced us to Gwendolle Jones. Gwendolle Jones, said Ron, his eyes widening under his own goggles. The Gwendolle Jones, captain of the Holy Hood Puppies. That's right, said Hermione. Personally, I thought she was a bit full of herself, but... Quite enough chat over there, said Professor Sprout briskly, bustling over and looking stern. You're lagging behind everybody else has started, and Neville's already got his first pod. They looked around. Sure enough, there sat Neville with a bloody lip and several nasty scratches on the side of his face, but clutching an unpleasant pulsating green object about the size of a grapefruit. I hope it's not a grenade. Although that would be rather interesting for it to be a grenade in this chapter. Okay, Professor, we're starting now, said Ron, adding quietly when she had turned away again. Should have used more from the auto, Harry. No, we shouldn't, said Hermione at once, looking as she always did, intensely cross at the thought of the half-blood prince and his spells. Well, come on, you'd better get going. She gave the other two an apprehensive look. They all took deep breaths, then dived at the gnarled stump between them. It sprang to life at once. Long, thrickly, bramble-like vines flew out of the top and whipped through the air. One pair tangled itself in Hermione's hair. Yeah, it would probably tangle in mine too. just the thought. and Ron beat it back with a pair of what? Secateurs? That sounds right. But now I'm curious. Okay, Google. What are secateurs? No, not secretary. Okay, Google. What are SECATEURS?
Secateurs are a type of pruning shears, also commonly known as hand pruners in American English. They are a handheld gardening tool specifically designed for cutting branches, stems, and woody growth on plants.
Oh, okay. So I did pronounce it right, and we learned what they are. Thank you, Google. Harry succeeded in trapping a couple of vines and knotting them together. A hole opened in the middle of all the tentacle-like branches. Hermione plunged her arm bravely into this hole, which closed like a trap around her elbow. Ouch. Harry and Ron tugged and wrenched at the vines, forcing the hole to open again, and Hermione snatched her arm free, clutching her fingers a pod just like Neville's. At once the prickly vine shot back inside, and the gnarled stump sat there looking like an innocently dead lump of wood. You know, I don't think I'll be having any of these in my garden when I've got my own place, said Ron, putting his goggles up onto his forehead and wiping sweat from his face. Pass me a pole, said Hermione, holding the pulsating pod at arm's length. Harry handed one over and dropped the pod in, and she dropped the pod into it with a look of disgust on her face. Don't be squeamish. Squeeze it out. They're best when they're fresh, called Professor Sprout. Anyway, said Hermione, continuing their interrupted conversation, as though a lump of wood had not just attacked them. Yes, sometimes my ADHD can have me to have similar moments. Slughorn's going to have a Christmas party, Harry, and there's no way he'll be able to record this one because he actually asked me to check your free evenings, so he could be sure to have it on a night you can come. Harry groaned. Meanwhile, Ron, who was attempting to burst the pod in the bowl by putting both hands on it, standing up and squashing it as hard as he could, said angrily, "And this is another party just for Slughorn's favorites, is it?" "Just for the Slug Club, yes," said Hermione. The pod flew out from under Ron's fingers and hit the greenhouse glass, rebounding onto the back of Professor Sprout's head and knocking off her old patched hat. Harry went to retrieve the pod. When he got back, Hermione was saying, "Look, I didn't make up the name Slug Club." "Slug Club," repeated Ron with a sneer worthy of Malfoy. "It's pathetic, but I hope you enjoy your party. Why don't you try hooking up with McLaggen, and Slughorn can make you King and Queen Slug." "We're allowed to bring guests," said Hermione, who for some reason had turned a bright boiling scarlet. "And I was going to ask you to come, but if you think it's that stupid, then I won't bother." Harry suddenly wished the pond had gone a little farther, so he need not have been sitting there with the pair of them. Unnoticed by either, he seized the bowl that contained the pod and began trying to open it by the noisiest and most energetic means he could think of. Unfortunately, he could still hear every word of their conversation. were going to ask me?" asked Ron in a completely different voice. "Yes," said Hermione angrily. "But obviously you'd prefer I rather hooked up with McLaggen." There was a pause while Harry continued to pound the resilient pod with the trowel. "I do know what one of those are." "No, I wouldn't," said Ron in a very quiet voice. Harry missed the pod, hit the bowl, and shattered it. "Reparo," he said hastily, poking the pieces with his wand, and the bowl sprang back together again. The crash, however, appeared to have woken Ron and Hermione to Harry's presence. Hermione looked flustered and immediately started fussing about for her copy of Flesh-Eating Trees of the World to find out the correct way to juice Snargle pods. Ron, on the other hand, looked sheepish but also rather pleased with himself. "Hand that over, Harry," said Hermione hurriedly. "It says we're supposed to punch them with something sharp." Harry passed her the pod and the bowl. He and Ron both snapped their goggles back over their eyes and dived once more for the stump. It was not as though he was really surprised, thought Harry, as he wrestled with the thorny vine intent upon throttling him. But he had an inkling that this might happen sooner or later. But he was not sure how he felt about it. He and Jo were now too embarrassed to look at each other, let alone talk to each other. What if Ron and Hermione started going out together, then split up? Could their friendship survive it? Harry remembered the few weeks when they had not been talking to each other in third year. He hadn't enjoyed trying to bridge the distance between them. And then, what if they didn't split up? What if they became like Bill and Fleur, and it became excruciatingly embarrassing to be in their presence, so that he was shut out for good? "Gotcha!" yelled Ron, pulling a second pod from the stump just as Hermione managed to burst the first one open, so that the bowl full of tubers, wriggling like pale green worms. The rest of the lesson passed without further mention of Slughorn's party. Although Harry watched his two friends more closely over the next few days, Ron and Hermione did not seem any different except that they were a little politer to each other than usual. Harry supposed he would just have to wait to see what happened under the influence of Butterbeer and Slughorn's dimly lit room on the night of the party. In the meantime, however, he had more pressing worries. Katie Bell was still in St. Mungo's Hospital with no prospect of leaving, which meant that the promising Gryffindor team Harry had been training so carefully since September was one t-shirt short. He kept putting off replacing Katie in the hope she would return, but their opening match against Slytherin was looming, and he finally had to accept that she would not be back in time to play. Harry did not think he could stand another full house tryout. With the sinking feeling that had little to do with Quidditch, he cornered Jane Thomas after Transfiguration one day. Most of the class had already left, though several twittering yellow birds were still zooming around the room, all of Hermione's creation. Nobody else had succeeded in conjuring so much as a feather from thin air. "Are you still interested in playing chase, sir?" "Well, yeah, of course," said Dean excitedly. Over Dean's shoulder, Harry saw Seamus Finnegan slamming his books into his bag, looking sour. One of the reasons why Harry would have preferred not to ask Dean to play was that he knew Seamus would not like it. On the other hand, he had to do what was best for the team, and Dean had outphoned Seamus at tryouts. "Well then, you're in," said Harry. "There's a practice tonight, 7 o'clock. "Right," said Dean. "Cheers, Harry. Blimey, I can't wait to tell Ginny." He sprinted out of the room, leaving Harry and Seamus alone together. An uncomfortable moment made no easier when a bird dropped and landed on Seamus' head as one of Hermione's canaries whizzed over them. Seamus was not the only person disgruntled by the choice of Katie's substitute. There was much muttering in the common room about the fact that Harry had now chosen two of his classmates for the team. As Harry had endured much worse mutterings than this in his school career, he was not particularly bothered, but all the same, the pressure was increasing to provide a win in the upcoming match against Slytherin. If Gryffindor won, Harry knew that the whole house would forget that they had criticized him and swear that they had always known it was a great team. If they lost, well, Harry thought rightly, he still had endured worse mutterings. Harry had no reason to regret his choice once he saw Dean fly that evening. He worked well with Ginny and Demelza. The beaters, Peaks and Coot, were getting better all the time. The only problem was Ron. Harry had known all along that Ron was an inconsistent player who suffered from nerves and a lack of confidence. I get that, Ron. I truly get that. And unfortunately, the looming prospect of the opening games of the season seemed to have brought out all his old insecurities. After letting in half a dozen goals, most of them scored by Ginny, his technique became wilder and wilder, until he finally punched an oncoming Demelza Robbins in the mouth. It was an accident! I'm sorry, Demelza! Really sorry! Ron shouted after her as she zigzagged back to the ground, dripping blood everywhere. I just panicked, Ginny said angrily, landing next to Demelza and examining her fat lip. You brat, Ron, look at the state of her! I can fix that, said Harry, landing beside the two girls, pointing his wand at Demelza's mouth and saying, "A pesky!" And Ginny, don't call Ron a prat. You're not the captain of this team. Well, you seem too busy to call him a prat, and I thought someone should. Harry forced himself not to laugh. In the air, everyone, let's go. Overall, it was one of the worst practices they had all term, though Harry did not feel that honesty was the best policy when they were this close to the match. Good work, everyone. I think we'll flatten Slytherin, he said bracingly, and the chasers and beaters left the changing room, looking reasonably happy with themselves. We played like a sack of dragon dung, said Ron in a hollow voice when the door had swung shut behind Ginny. No, you didn't, said Harry firmly. You're the best keeper I tried out, Ron. The only problem is nerves. He kept up a relentless flow of encouragement all the way back to the castle, and by the time they reached the second floor, Ron was looking marginally more cheerful. When Harry pushed open the tapestry to take their usual shortcut up to Gryffindor Tower, however, they found themselves looking at Dean and Ginny, who were locked in a close embrace and fiercely making up a new word here, apparently. Kissing fiercely, as though glued together. It was as though something large and scaly had erupted into life in Harry's stomach, pawing him at his insides. Hot blood seemed to flood in his brain, so all thought was extinguished, replaced by a savage urge to jinx Dean into a jelly. Wrestling with this sudden madness, he heard Ron's voice as though from a great distance away. Oi! Dean and Ginny broke apart and looked around. What? Said Ginny. I don't want to find my own sister stalking people in public. This was a deserted corridor till you came butting in, said Ginny. Dean was looking embarrassed. He gave Harry a shifty grin that Harry did not return, as the newborn monster inside him was roaring for Dean's instant dismissal from the team. Come on, Ginny, said Dean. Let's go back to the common room. You go. I want a word with my dear brother. Dean left, looking as though he was not sorry to depart the scene. Right, said Ginny, tossing her long red hair out of her face and glaring at Ron. Let's get this straight once and for all. It is none of your business who I go out with, but what I did with them, Ron. Yeah, it is, said Ron just as angrily. Do you think I want people seeing my sisters of... Of what? Shouted Ginny, drawing her wand. Of what exactly? It doesn't mean anything, Ginny, said Harry automatically, though the monster was roaring its approval of Ron's words. Oh, yes, he does, she said, flaring up at Harry. Just because he's never smoked anyone in his life, just because the best kiss he's ever had is from our Auntie Muriel, she becomes important later. Shut your mouth, bellowed Ron, bypassing Red and turning maroon. No, I'm not, yelled Ginny beside herself. I've seen you with them. Hoping she'll kiss you on the cheek every time you see her. It's pathetic. If you went out and got a bit of snogging done yourself, you wouldn't mind so much that everyone else does it. Ron had pulled out his wand too. Harry stepped swiftly between them. You don't know what you're talking about, Ron roared, trying to get a clear shot of Ginny around Harry, who was standing in front of her with his arms outstretched. Just because I don't do it in public! Ginny screamed with derisive laughter, trying to push Harry out of the way. Then kissing bedridden, have you? Or if you got a picture of Auntie Muriel stashed under your pillow? You! A streak of orange light flew under Harry's left arm and missed Ginny by inches. Harry pushed Ron up against the wall. Don't be stupid! Harry snobbed Cho Chang, shouted Ginny, who sounded close to tears now. And Hermione snobbed Victor Crumb. It's only you who acts like it's something disgusting wrong, and that's because you've got about as much of experience as a 12-year-old. And with that she stormed away. Harry quickly let go of Ron. The look on his face was murderous. They both stood there, breathing heavily, until Mrs. Norris, Filch's cat, appeared around the corner, which broke the tension. Come on, said Harry as the sound of Filch's shuffling feet reached their ears. They hurried up the stairs and along a 7th-floor corridor. Oi, out of the way! Ron barked at a small girl who jumped in fright and dropped a bottle of toad spawn. I don't think I want to know. Harry hardly noticed the sound of shattering glass. He felt disoriented, dizzy. Being struck by a lightning bolt must be something like this. It's just because she's my sister, he told himself. You just didn't like seeing her kissing Dean because she's Ron's sister. But unbidden into his mind came an image of that same deserted corridor with himself kissing Ginny instead. The monster in his chest purred. But then he saw Ron ripping open the tapestry curtain and drawing his wand on Harry, shouting things like betrayal of trust and supposed to be my friend. Do you think Hermione did smoke Crumb? Ron asked abruptly as they approached the fat lady. Harry gave a guilty start and wrenched his imagination away from a corridor in which no Ron intruded, in which he and Ginny were quite alone. What? He said confusedly. Oh, The honest answer was yes, but he did not want to give it. However, Ron seemed to gather the worst from the look on Harry's face. "Delicate ground," he said darkly to the fat lady. And they climbed through the portrait hole into the common room. Neither of them mentioned Ginny or Hermione again. Indeed, they barely spoke to each other that evening, and got into bed in silence, each absorbed in his own thoughts. Harry lay awake for a long time, looking up at the canopy of his four-poster and trying to convince himself that his feelings for Ginny were entirely elder brotherly. They had lived, had they not, like brother and sister all summer, playing Quidditch, teasing Ron, and having a laugh about Bill and Flem. He had known Ginny for years now. It was natural that he should feel protective, natural that he should want to look out for her, want to rip Dean limb from kissing her. No. He would have to control that particular brotherly feeling. Ron gave a grunting snore. "She's Ron's sister," Harry told himself firmly. "Ron's sister. She's out of bounds." He would not risk his friendship with Ron for anything. He punched his pillow. Okay. There, I punched my pillow. Into a more comfortable shape and waited for sleep to come, trying his utmost not to allow his thoughts to stray anywhere near Ginny. Harry awoke the next morning feeling slightly dazed and confused by a series of dreams in which Ron had chased him with the beater's bat, but by midday he would have happily exchanged the dream Ron for the real one, who was not only cold-shouldering Ginny and Dean, but also treating a hurt and bewildered Hermione with an icy, sneering indifference. And while we're on the topic, indifference is one of my red flags for others. Considering what I've been through, and I've hinted at it in previous chapters, indifference for a red flag in others is it just makes sense. I don't feel like I need to explain if you remember what I kind of hinted at in past chapters. So, yeah. But anyway, what was more, Ron seemed to have become overnight as touchy and ready to lash out as the average blast-ended Scroot. Harry spent the day attempting to keep the peace between Ron and Hermione with no success. Finally, Hermione departed for bed in High Dungeon, and Ron stalked off to the boys' dormitory after swearing angrily at several frightened first years for looking at him. Hugs for the first years, and Harry, who is trying his hardest. To Harry's dismay, Ron's new aggression did not wear off over the next few days. Worse still, it coincided with an even deeper dip in his keeping skills, which made him still more aggressive, so that during the final Quidditch practice before Saturday's match, he failed to save every single goal the chasers aimed at him, but bellowed at everybody so much that he reduced Imelda Robbins to tears. "You shut up and leave her alone!" shouted Peeves, who was about 2/3 Ron's height, though admittedly carrying a heavy ball. "Enough!" bellowed Harry, who had seen Ginny glowering in Ron's direction, and remembering her reputation as an accomplished caster of the Bathildy Hex, soared over to intervene before things got out of hand. "Pigs, go and pack up the pledgers. Mazza, pull yourself together. You played really well today. Ron..." He waited until the rest of the team were out of earshot before saying it. "You're my best mate, but carry on treating the rest of the team like this." "You're my best mate. But carry on treating the rest of them like this, and I'm going to kick you off the team. He really thought for a moment that Ron might hit him. But then something much worse happened. Ron seemed to sag on his broom. All the fright went out of him, and he said, "I resign. I'm pathetic." "You're not pathetic, and you're not resigning," said Harry fiercely, seizing Ron by the front of his robes. "You can save everything when you're on form. It's a mental problem you've got." "You're calling me mental?" "Yeah, maybe I am." They glared at each other for a moment. Then Ron shook his head wearily. "I know you haven't got any time to find another keeper, so I'll play tomorrow. But if I lose, and we will, I'm taking myself off the team." Nothing Harry said made any difference. He tried boosting Ron's confidence all through dinner, but Ron was too busy being grumpy and surly with Hermione to notice. Harry persisted in the common room that evening, but his assertion that the whole team would be devastated if Ron left was somewhat undermined by the fact that the rest of the team was sitting in a huddle in a distant corner, clearly muttering about Ron and casting him nasty looks. Finally, Harry tried getting angry again in the hope of provoking Ron into a defiant and hopefully goal-saving attitude, but this strategy did not appear to work any better than encouragement. Ron went to bed as dejected and hopeless as ever. Oh, hugs for Ron. Harry lay awake for a very long time in the darkness. He did not want to lose the upcoming match. Not only was it his first as captain, but he was determined to beat Draco Malfoy at Quidditch even if he couldn't yet prove his suspicions about him. Yet if Ron played as he had done in the last few practices, their chances of winning were very slim. If only there was something he could do to make Ron pull himself together. Make him play at the top of his form. Something that would ensure Ron had a really good day. And the answer came to Harry in one sudden glorious stroke of inspiration. Breakfast was the usual excitable affair next morning. The Slytherins hissed and booed wildly as every member of the Gryffindor team entered the Great Hall. Harry glanced at the ceiling and saw a clear, pale blue sky. A good omen. The Gryffindor table, a solid mass of red and gold, cheered as Harry and Ron approached. Harry grinned and waved. Ron grimaced weakly and shook his head. "Cheer up, Ron," called Lavender. "I know you'll be brilliant." Ron ignored her. "Tea?" Harry asked him. "I'll take some tea, Harry." What tea are you offering, though? Is it Earl Grey, black, green, jasmine, oolong, hibiscus? Yes, that's a thing. What other tea tips are there? Royal breakfast, lavender. It's clear I know my teas, isn't it? Well, I am a tea connoisseur and aficionado, so if you have suggestions on if you have a favorite tea, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear what it is. Well, I guess read what it is since I can't actually hear your voice, but the concept is there all the same. Coffee? Pumpkin juice? Anything, said Ron grimly, taking a moody bite of toast. I love toast, but then again, you kind of picked up on this with a previous chapter, so. A few minutes later, Hermione, who had become so tired of Ron's recent unpleasant behavior that she had not come down to breakfast with them, paused on her way up the table. "How are you both feeling?" she asked tentatively, her eyes on the back of Ron's head. Fine, said Harry, who was concentrating on handing Ron a glass of pumpkin juice. There you go, Ron. Drink up. Ron had just raised the glass to his lips and Hermione spoke sharply. Don't drink that, Ron! Both Harry and Ron looked up at her. Why not? Said Ron. Hermione was now staring at Harry as though she could not believe her eyes. You just put something in that drink. Excuse me? Said Harry. You heard me. I saw you. You just dipped something into Ron's drink. You got the bottle in your hand right now. I don't know what you're talking about, said Harry, stowing the little bottle hastily in his pocket. Ron, I warn you, don't drink it, Hermione said, again alarmed. But Ron picked up the glass, drained it in one gulp, and said, Stop pushing me around, Hermione. She looked scandalized. Bending so low that only Harry could hear her, she hissed, You should be expelled for that! I never believed it of you, Harry! Who's talking? He whispered back. Confounded anyone lately? She stormed up the table away from them. Harry watched her go without regret. Hermione had never really understood what a serious business Quidditch was. He then looked around at Ron, who was smacking his lips. Nearly time, said Harry blithely. The frosty grass crunched underfoot as they strode down to the stadium. Pretty lucky the weather's this good, eh? Harry asked Ron. Yeah, said Ron, who was pale and sick-looking. Ginny and Demoiselle were already wearing their Quidditch robes and waiting in the changing room. Conditions look ideal, said Ginny, ignoring Ron. And guess what? That Slytherin chaser Paisley, he took a flutter in the head yesterday during their practice. He's too short to play. And even better than that, Malfoy's gone off sick too. What? Said Harry, wheeling around to stare at her. He's ill? What's wrong with him? No idea, but it's great for us, said Ginny brightly. They're playing Harper instead. He's a Meyer and he's an idiot. Oh, Ginny, I love you. I love you so much, Ginny. Harry smiled back vaguely, but as he pulled on his scarlet robes, his mind was not far from Quidditch. Malfoy had once claimed he could not play due to injury, but on that occasion he had made sure the whole match was rescheduled for a time that suited the Slytherins better. Why was he now happy to let a substitute go on? Was he really ill, or was he faking? A good question, Harry. Well, a good set of questions, I mean. Fishy, isn't it? He said in an undertone to Ron. Malfoy not playing. Lucky, I call it, said Ron, looking slightly more animated. And Facey off too. He's a best goal scorer. I didn't fancy. Hey, he said suddenly, freezing halfway through pulling on his keeper's gloves and staring at Harry. What? You. Ron had dropped his voice. He looked both scared and excited. My drink! My pumpkin juice! You didn't. Harry raised his eyebrows, but said nothing except, We'll be starting in about 5 minutes. You better get your boots on. And they walked out onto the pitch to tumultuous roars and boos. Autistic nightmare. Anxiety nightmare 2. One end of the stadium was solid red and gold. Well, my colors, because, well, if you haven't guessed due to my bookmark yet, this is my house. The other, a sea of green and silver. Many Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws had taken sides too, amidst all the yelling and clapping. Autistic and anxiety nightmare. Harry could distinctly hear the roar of Luna Lovegood's famous line Top Tat. Okay, let's roar. I hope you liked it. stepped up to Madame Hooch, the referee, who was standing ready to release the balls from the crate. "Captains, shake hands," she said, and Harry had his hand crushed by the new Slytherin captain, Urquhart. "Mount your brooms," on the whistle. 3, 2, 1. The whistle sounded. Harry and the others kicked off hard from the frozen ground, and they were away. Harry soared around the perimeter of the grounds, looking around for the snitch and keeping one eye on Harper, who was zigzagging far below him. Then a voice that was jarringly different to the usual commentaries. I'm gonna reread that. Then a voice that was jarringly different to the usual commentary. I'm gonna try rereading that in the third time. Maybe it'll be the turn. Then a voice that was jarringly different to the usual commentators started up. There we go. Well, there they go, and I think we're all surprised to see the team that Potter's put together this year. Many thought, given Ronald Weasley's patchy performance as keeper last year, that he might be off the team, but of course a close personal friendship with the captain does help. These words were greeted with jeers and applause from the Slytherin end of the pitch. Harry craned around on his room to look toward the commentator's podium. A tall, skinny, blond boy with an upturned nose was standing there, talking into the magical megaphone that had once been Lee Jordan's. Harry recognized Zacharias Smith. Again, no relation, although a lot of my family are Hufflepuffs, as I've mentioned before, whom he heartily disliked. Oh, and here comes Slytherin's first attempt on goal. It's Urquhart streaking down the pitch, and Harry's stomach turned over. Weasley saves it! Well, he's bound to get lucky sometimes, I suppose. That's right, Smith, he is, muttered Harry, grinning to himself, as he dived amongst the chasers with his eyes searching all round for some hint of the elusive snitch. With half an hour of the game gone, Gryffindor were leading 60 points to 0. Ron having made some truly spectacular saves, some by the very tips of his gloves, and Ginny having scored 4 of Gryffindor's 6 goals. Good job, Ginny and Ron! This effectively stopped Zacharias wondering wildly whether the two Weasleys were only there because Harry liked them. And he started on Peeks and Cooch and said, "Of course Cooch isn't really the usual build for a beater," said Zacharias loftily. "They've generally got a bit more muscle." "Hit a bludger at him!" Harry called to Cooch as he zoomed past, but Cooch, grinning broadly, chose to aim the next bludger at Harper instead, who was just passing Harry in the opposite direction. Harry was pleased to hear the dull thunk that meant the bludger had found its mark. It seemed as though Gryffindor could do no wrong. Again and again they scored. And again, at the other end of the pitch, Ron saved goals with apparent ease. He was actually smiling now. And when the crowd greeted a particularly good save with a rousing chorus of the old favorite Weasley's Arcane, he pretended to conduct them from on high. "Thinks he's something special today, doesn't he?" said a snide voice, and Harry was nearly knocked off his broom as Harper collided with him hard and deliberately. "You blood traitor pal!" Madame Hooch's back was turned, and though the Gryffindors below shouted in anger, by the time she looked around, Harper had already sped off. His shoulder aching, Harry raced after him, determined to ram him back. "And I think Harper of Slytherin's seen the snitch," said Zacharias Smith. "No relation, again." through his megaphone. Yes, he's certainly seen something Potter hasn't. Smith really wasn't an idiot, thought Harry. Hadn't he noticed them collide? But next moment his stomach seemed to drop out of the sky. Smith was right and Harry was wrong. Harper had not sped upward at random. He had spotted what Harry had not. The snitch was speeding along high above them, glinting brightly against the clear blue sky. Harry accelerated. The wind was whistling in his ears so that it drowned all sound of Smith's commentary of the crowd. But Harper was still ahead of him, and Gryffindor was only 100 points up. If Harper got there first, Gryffindor had lost. And now Harper was feet from it, his hand outstretched. "Why, Harper!" yelled Harry in desperation. "How much did Malfoy pay you to come on instead of him?" He did not know what made him say it, but Harper did a double take. He fumbled the snitch, let it slip through his fingers, and shot right past it. Harry made a great swipe for the tiny fluttering ball and caught it. "Yes!" Harry yelled. Wheeling around, he hurtled back toward the ground, the snitch held high in his hand. As the crowd realized what happened, a great shout went up that almost drowned the sound of the whistle. That signaled the end of the game. "Ginny, where are you going?" yelled Harry, as he found who had found himself trapped in the midst of a mass mid-air hug with the rest of the team. But Ginny sped right on past them until, with an almighty crash, she collided with the commentator's podium. Remember that I said I love Ginny? Keep this in mind because this is probably one of my top favorite Ginny moments. And I'm sure fellow Ginny fans also love it. I hope I do it justice. And with Bonnie right in mind. As the crowd shrieked and laughed, the Gryffindor team landed beside the wreckage of wood under which Zacharias was feebly stirring. Harry heard Ginny saying blithely to an airway Professor McGonagall, "Forgot to break, Professor. Sorry." I so wish we saw that in the films. I really, really do. Laughing, I did too. Harry broke free of the rest of the team and hugged Ginny, but let go very quickly. Avoiding her gaze, he clapped the cheering Ron on the back instead. As all enmity forgotten, the Gryffindor team left the pitch arm in arm, punching the air and waving to their supporters. The atmosphere in the changing room was jubilant. Such a good word, although I would have used euphoric. But I guess that's me. Either that or jovial. They all kind of mean the same thing, but personal preference, I guess. "Party up in the common room!" Seamus said, yelled Dean exuberantly. "Come on, Ginny, Demelza!" Ron and Harry were the last two in the changing room. They were just about to leave when Hermione entered. She was twisting her Gryffindor scarf in her hands and looked upset but determined. "I want a word with you, Harry." She took a deep breath. "You shouldn't have done it. You heard Slughorn. It's illegal." "What are you going to do? Turn us in?" demanded Ron. "What are you two talking about?" asked Harry, turning away to hang up his robe so that neither of them could see him grinning. "You know perfectly well what we're talking about," said Hermione shrilly. "You spiked Ron's juice with lucky potion of breakfast! Felix Felicis!" "No, I didn't," said Harry, turning back to face them both. Yes, you did, Harry, and that's why everything went right. There were Slytherin players missing, and Ron saved everything. I didn't put it in, said Harry, grinning broadly. He slipped his hand inside the pocket and drew out the tiny bottle that Hermione had seen in his hand that morning. It was full of golden potion, and the cork was still tightly sealed with wax. I wanted to think Ron I'd done it, so I faked it when I knew you were looking. He looked at Ron. You saved everything because you felt lucky. You did it all yourself. He pocketed the potion again. There really wasn't anything in my pumpkin juice? Ron said, astounded. But the weather's good. And Lucy couldn't play. I honestly haven't been given lucky potion. Harry shook his head. Ron gaped at him for a moment, then rounded on Hermione, imitating her voice. You added Phoenix Felicis of Ron's juice this morning. That's why he saved everything. See? I can't save goals without help, Hermione. You never said you couldn't. Ron, you thought you'd been given it too. But Ron had already strode past her out the door with his broomstick over his shoulder. Said Harry into the sudden silence. He had not expected his plan to backfire like this. So, shall we go up to the party then? You go, said Hermione, blinking back tears. I'm sick of Ron at the moment. I don't know what I'm supposed to have done. Be supportive, perhaps? And she stormed out of the changing room too. Harry walked slowly back up the grounds toward the castle through the crowd, many of who shouted congratulations at him, but he felt a great sense of letdown. He had been sure that if Ron won the match, he and Hermione would be friends again immediately. He could not see how he could possibly explain to Hermione what she had done to offend Ron was to kiss Victor Krum. Not when the offense had occurred so long ago. Harry could not see Hermione at the Gryffindor celebration party, which was in full swing when he arrived. Renewed cheers and clapping greeted his appearance, and he was soon surrounded by a mob of people congratulating him. With what was trying to shake off the Creevy brothers, who wanted a blow-by-blow match analysis, and the large group of girls that encircled him, laughing at his least amusing comments and batting their eyelids. It was some time before he could try to find Ron. At last he extricated himself from Romilda Vane, who was hinting heavily that she would like to go to Slughorn's Christmas party with him. As he was ducking toward the drinks table, he walked straight into Ginny, Arnold the pygmy pup riding on her shoulder, and Crookshanks mewing hopefully at her heels. I'd pet you, Crookshanks. But here's some meows, by the way. Meow, 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 meow. Looking for Ron? She asked, smirking. He's over there, the filthy hypocrite. Harry looked into the corner she was indicating. There, in full view of the whole room, stood Ron, wrapped so closely around Lavender Brown, it was hard to tell whose hands were whose. Looks like he's eating her face, doesn't it? Said Ginny dispassionately. But I suppose he's got to refine his technique somehow. Good game, Harry. She patted him on the arm. I know this is technically like my shoulder, but just bear with me. Harry felt a swooping sensation in his stomach. But then she walked off to help herself to more butterbeer. I mean, I don't blame her. Butterbeer is delicious. And if you want to make it, follow my 2-ingredient recipe. It's between parts 100 and 101. Crookshanks trotted after her, his yellow eyes fixed upon Arnold. Something I've noticed, Arnold is an anagram of Ronald. I think that's brilliant of Ginny to name it Arnold. But anyway, moving on. Harry turned away from Ron, who did not look like he would be surfacing soon, just as the portrait hole was closing. With a sinking feeling, he thought he saw a mane of bushy brown hair whipping out of sight. He darted forward, sidestepped Romilda Vane again, and pushed the portrait of the fat lady open. The corridor outside seemed to be deserted. Hermione? He found her in the first unlocked classroom he tried. She was sitting on the teacher's desk alone, except for a small ring of twittering yellow birds circling her head, which she had clearly just conjured out of midair. Harry could not help admiring her spellwork at a time like this. Hello, Harry, she said in a brittle voice. I was just practicing. Yeah, they're really good, said Harry. He had no idea what to say to her. He was just wondering whether there was any chance that she had not noticed Ron. That she had merely left the room because the party was a little too rowdy. I mean, that would be my reasoning. When she said it in a naturally high-pitched voice, Ron seems to be enjoying the celebrations. Does he? Said Harry. Don't pretend you didn't see him, said Hermione. It wasn't exactly hiding, it was. The door behind them burst open. To Harry's horror, Ron came in laughing, pulling Lavender by the hand. Oh, he said, drawing up short at the sight of Harry and Hermione. Oops, said Lavender, and she backed out of the room, giggling. Don't know what I'm trying to say here. The door swung shut behind her. There was a horrible, swelling, billowing silence. Hermione was staring at Ron, who refused to look at her, but said with an odd mixture of bravado and awkwardness, Hi, Harry. Wondered where you got off to. Hermione slid off the desk. The little flock of golden birds continued to twitter in circles around her head, so that she looked like a strange feathery model of the solar system. Ooh, that's rather fitting. Good job, J.K. Rowling. You shouldn't leave Lavender waiting outside, she said quietly. She'll wonder where we've gone. She walked very slowly and erectly toward the door. Harry glanced at Ron, who was looking relieved that nothing worse had happened. Pagano! Came a shriek from the doorway. Harry spun around to see Hermione pointing her wand at Ron, her expression wild. The little flock of birds was speeding like a hail of fat golden bullets toward Ron, who yelped and covered his face with his hands. But the birds attacked, pecking and clawing at every bit of flesh they could reach. Get her off me! He yelled. But with one last look of vindictive fury, Hermione wrenched open the door and disappeared through it. Harry thought he heard a sob before it slammed. And that is the end of this chapter. Hugs for Hermione. Big time. That said, because it's probably gonna take the week to recover from all that. Join me next week for chapter 15, The Unbreakable Vow. Until then, another hug for Hermione, and bye!